There is a belief that Chiara Borja had an intimate relationship with her own sister Lucretia, but darker rumors also circulated within the family. The Borja family's history became synonymous with betrayal, debauchery, and scandals. Along with the so-called Michis Borja, they held one of the most influential positions during Italy's Renaissance, and their activities could have rivaled the most dramatic episodes of the Game of Thrones series. The Borja lineage was a powerful family tracing its origins to Rodrigo and his main mistress, the beautiful Vota de Catini. Having a mistress was already scandalous in itself, but Rodrigo Borja's situation was complicated by the fact that he simultaneously held the position of pope, officially known as Alexander I, who was considered the true holder of spiritual authority at that time. According to church doctrine, the pope should dedicate himself fully to serving God rather than earthly passions, yet Rodrigo was surrounded by secular passions. During this period, religious leaders in Italy wielded almost unlimited power. They could grant wealth, fulfill desires, or ruin others' destinies at their discretion. For a certain period, the Borja family held this formidable instrument of power, which extended not only over Pope Alexander V himself, but also over his close circle. Rodrigo Borja loved to spend church money on luxurious living, and Vota de Catini was not his only mistress. Like his predecessors, he generously awarded high church offices to friends and relatives. However, his family situation was even more scandalous. Rodrigo had 4 children born within his marriage to Vota: Chiara, Lucretia, and Geoffrey. Of course, he also had many other daughters and sons, born to various mistresses. Particularly notorious in history were Chiara and Lucretia, whose reputations were soon tarnished by scandals and shame. During his campaign to become the new pope, Rodrigo Borja apparently concealed the existence of his children, insisting that he was more an uncle than a father. Only after his election to the papacy did he publicly acknowledge his children, which was an event without exaggeration historic, as such an acknowledgement had never been made by a pope before. This caused a real scandal and only amplified the negative perception of the Borja family among society and church circles. From a young age, Chiara was prepared to follow in her parents' footsteps and become a spiritual leader. She took her first significant steps in this direction at the age of 15, when she was appointed Bishop of Pampeluna, and this happened only 2 years after that appointment. She was later named Archbishop of Valencia, and, as with nearly every mention of her, she left a vivid impression. Chiari was a man of extraordinary charm, so much so that there are even speculations suggesting that his face could have served as the model for European representations of Jesus Christ. However, his well-crafted exterior concealed something much darker and more sinister inside. It was said that Chiari was the most ruthless of all members of the powerful Bura family, a family whose name became synonymous with cruelty and ruthlessness. Throughout the 11th month of the 9th year, that is, 1499, he issued orders for executions, including those of a Spanish constable, a captain, and even a bishop, demonstrating his relentless brutality and indifference to human life. After returning to life at the age of 23, in the 9th month, he married Charlotte of Alaya. Although her beauty could soften any feelings, her most valuable trait was her kinship. She was the sister of King John III of Navarre. But their marriage was more political than based on love. The Chiari family was driven solely by alliances and connections that could strengthen their power in Italy. His family, the Bora, was known for its passion for luxury and impulsiveness. He was a man with a rich, sometimes wild nature. It is known that he had at least 11 illegitimate children, born outside his marriage to Charlotte, who, however, was his only lawful wife. They had only one daughter, Luisa, which further confirmed how brief their true bond was. In the summer of 1493, both Chiari and his father Rodrigo fell ill with a mysterious and terrible disease that destroyed their bodies and drained their strength. This disease was shrouded in secrecy, as its exact cause remained unknown. Both majestic men, heads of the Bura family, were confined to their beds with fever and trembling convulsions. Despite his ordeal, Chiari survived, but unfortunately, his father passed away. Initially, Chiari was destined for a spiritual career and even achieved the rank of cardinal. But eventually he realized that his path was not to lead a holy life. He decided that his calling was war and struggle. In 1514, he became the first person in history to resign from the position of cardinal, a truly revolutionary act. After this, he became increasingly involved in military affairs, becoming one of the most powerful and ruthless generals of his time. It was said that, in his final years, he covered half his face with a mask made of leather. The reason for this remains unknown. Perhaps behind it were scars from syphilis that had once disfigured his handsome face, causing his former charm and attractiveness to disappear. As if all his wildness, all his sleepless nights, and boundless passions had finally caught up with him. Illness and the heaviness of life took their toll. In the end, the great Chiara Bura, a man destined to become a symbol of ruthless power, died a cruel and dishonorable death. Over time, he gradually lost influence and was pushed aside from power. This was due to his own actions and his steady retreat from politics and the military sphere. In 1507, he participated in military operations. During one of the campaigns, a group of knights dared to escape from the castle at the most inopportune moment, when a storm cloud loomed on the horizon. In their haste, they tried to find shelter and escape, hoping to hide from the pursuing army. But they were suddenly overtaken by a fierce warrior named Cesare, whose fury and agitated temper overwhelmed him. In a rush, he chased after the fugitives, unaware of the danger to himself, which made him extremely vulnerable. Eventually, the knights quickly assessed the situation and captured their prey. In a matter of moments, they seized him, killed him with a spear, and stripped his rich garments adorned with pearls and expensive jewelry. Once, Cesare was a leader feared and hated, a man who inspired fear with his knightly honor and authority. But now, he was merely a cold, naked corpse in the midst of a raging storm, under gusts of wind and thunderclaps, creating a dark and ominous atmosphere. Lucrezia Bura, the middle child and the only daughter among four siblings, was never content with merely being a spectator or a participant in family entertainment. On the contrary, she exhibited the same passion for danger and cruelty as her older brothers. With intelligence, high education, and stunning beauty, even as a young girl, Lucretia often became a pawn in her family's political interests. Her father and brothers tirelessly sought the most advantageous marriages for her, guided by political considerations and the desire to strengthen their positions. As a result, she married 3 times during her life, which was common in those times when women's fates were often tied to political alliances. In childhood, Lucretia received the best education available to girls of her era. At first glance, this seemed progressive, since noble girls were usually sent to monasteries for schooling, where the main goal was to instill piety and traditional obedience. However, her studies in languages, poetry, and literature went significantly against prevailing standards, and such pursuits were considered so revolutionary that they were viewed as scandalous or even indecent. It was this comprehensive and profound education that transformed Lucretia into a powerful persona. As an adult woman, she demonstrated herself as an excellent manager. Thanks to family ties and internal nepotism, she independently governed the Spoleto region, holding a position that previously could only be occupied by high-ranking ecclesiastical figures such as cardinals. Her authority and independence in this crucial administrative region testified to her talent and capability. In her youth, being quite attractive and intelligent, Lucretia actively sought a suitable husband to strengthen her position. In 1493, her parents found her a fitting suitor, Giovanni Sforza, a count who was the illegitimate son of one of their powerful rivals named Sforza. This marriage arrangement was intended to create a new political alliance, which, in her family's plan, would further consolidate their influential positions. However, it appears that Ciusi, who was serving in the military at the time, was disapproving of the fact that his marriage alliance ceased to bring political advantage. His dissatisfaction manifested in a sense that he seemed to have lost his significance and influence, which could have led to further actions and changes in his attitude towards the union, which previously appeared beneficial and promising. For a long time, he was plagued by failures and futile attempts to eliminate his son-in-law, stories that culminated in Giovanni having to flee to Rome to escape his persecutors. There, he was forced to renounce all rights and status, seeking to annul the marriage. After that, Lucretia's family quickly sought to forge another advantageous alliance, and in 1498, she was married to Duke Alfonso of Aragon. However, as it turned out, this second marriage was even shorter than her union with Sforza, and twice as violent. In July 1500, when Alfonso's influence on the Bura family was also beginning to decline, armed men attacked him on the steps of the Vatican Basilica, near St. Peter's Basilica. They struck him multiple times and wounded him with a knife. Miraculously, he survived the first attack, but while he was recovering, another group of armed men broke into his room and strangled him, killing him in the most tragic way. After this, when the dust settled, many whispered that the same Cesario Bura was behind the assassination again. At that time, Lucretia was free to seek another advantageous alliance, as she was no longer bound by previous ties and obligations. In 1512, she finally found someone she considered her only, or at least sufficiently useful person for her family. This person was not murdered, but married. In the same year, she married Alfonso d'Este, Duke of Ferrara. Shortly after, during their marriage, Lucretia gave birth to 8 children and enjoyed her life as a court lady. During this period, Lucretia attempted to shed the dark image that had haunted her family for decades after the death of her father, Rodrigo, and her champion brother, Cesario. She managed to maintain a luxurious position within the upper echelons of Italian society despite everything. However, neither motherhood nor marriage stopped her. She continued to lead an active personal life, indulging in serial romances. The most passionate of her pursuits was the affair with her own son-in-law, Francesco Gonzaga. The two exchanged long, passionate letters in which they praised each other's physical attractiveness more than they discussed the concept of true love. Interestingly, Lucretia's affair with Francesco may have been motivated not only by passion, but also by a desire for revenge. Francesco, as is well known, was married to the beautiful, refined, and intelligent Isabella d'Este. Lucretia had previously tried to establish a friendly relationship with her, but Isabella showed no interest in such an alliance. Ultimately, the conflicts and intrigues related to family ambitions and passions continued to smolder, leading to new conflicts and secret alliances within the powerful House of Bora at the time. For many years, Vittoria van de Tyne remained in the background of history, yet she was the woman who outlived all her sons. Only Luigia lived long enough to bury Venza, her daughter, after her death in November 1518. The following year, already pregnant again, Luigia gave birth to a girl named Isabella, but, unfortunately, the child was ill and died the same day. It is worth noting that at the age of 39, Luigia suffered from serious health problems throughout her late pregnancy, and her condition worsened significantly after childbirth. Alfonso, her husband, tried to help her recover her health, but to no avail. Soon after giving birth, Luigia died, just 10 days after the birth of her youngest daughter. The Bura family had only one child, Gofre, who was born in 1414. His father, Rodrigo, at that time, married the beautiful and influential Princess Sancha of Aragon, daughter of the King of Naples. Such a union seemed ideal, a dream of any fairy tale lineage, uniting two mighty families. However, reality proved to be much darker. Shortly after, in early July 1419, a year that brought many tragedies, Sancha began engaging in intrigues on the side, as if seeking recognition and power. Soon after, a tragedy occurred that shocked the entire family and the surrounding area, becoming a true mystery. Gofre was ruthlessly murdered under suspicious circumstances. He was last seen alive with his brothers, Cesare and Giovanni, in their mother's house, after he left the premises. In the morning, his body was no longer visible, and later it was found in the Tiber River, infamously suffering with a cut throat and 9 stab wounds in the chest area. Weighed down by grief over his son's death, Rodrigo was inconsolable. He demanded a thorough investigation, hoping to find the culprits. But just a week later, he unexpectedly halted the investigation, altogether abandoning any pursuit. The motives behind this decision remain a mystery to this day, as do the circumstances of Giovanni's death. There are only a few hints suggesting that his brothers might have been responsible. Part 6 of 7. The time when Giovanni increasingly took on responsibility within the family could have caused jealousy and resentment from Cesare. As for Gofre, it is known that he was involved in a romance with his own wife, and apparently, this was not his only affair, as such intrigues were common in those times. In an environment filled with political ambitions and complex power struggles, many sought their own paths to influence, even at the cost of accusations and suspicion among their closest allies. Rodrigo, despite his decisiveness, probably longed for peace within the family, preferring not to involve his children in dangerous games and conflicts. First and foremost, it is worth noting that, in a history filled with lies and betrayal, the Bura family's name soon became associated with cruelty and treachery among other noble families of Italy. These families included well-known dynasties such as the Dai, Deli Re, and Sporca, the driving forces of the Renaissance, constantly vying to seize new positions of power. Their internal conflicts often escalated into bloody clashes, and their struggle for dominance became more of a constant race for small but significant slices of influence. Gradually, the Bura family's once seemingly unshakable power began to fade. These families forever entered the cultural legacy, leaving a vivid mark in the collective memory. They were mentioned not only in hundreds of novels, films, TV shows, and comics, but even found a place in computer games like Assassin's Creed. Due to their numerous mistakes and legends, the Bura became symbols of treachery and intrigue, figures in whom even artists and writers sought reflection of the mysterious, sometimes sinister side of that era. The Bura's ties with Renaissance artists were very strong. It is known that Cesare Bura hired Leonardo da Vinci in 1502 as a military architect and engineer. At that time, da Vinci, serving under Cesare, was free to oversee any construction projects on the lands controlled by this noble family. In the press and in legends, the image of the Bura as masters involved in wicked deeds and betrayal persisted, and their reputation for evil and deception only intensified, even as the influence of noble houses gradually waned. In the 19th century, artist John Collier painted a scene depicting Cesare, his wife Lucrezia, and their father gathered around a grand banquet table. In this scene, Cesare offers a young man a glass of wine, who refuses, possibly out of vague suspicion that the wine might be poisoned. This scene symbolizes how, during the Bura era, suspicion of poison and nefarious methods to eliminate rivals was common. Despite numerous stories portraying the Bura as symbols of absolute evil and vice, some believe that such a reputation is not entirely justified. Modern historians tend to point out that most myths about the Bura family originated from accounts by a few contemporaries, and for centuries, many of their enemies sought to tarnish their image. Throughout the ages, rumors circulated that Chiara Bura and her sister Lucretia allegedly had passionate, mysterious relationships with each other. The first to propose such a hypothesis was Lucretia's unhappy and dissatisfied husband, Giovanni Sporca. He also claimed that the reason for the break between Pope Alexander VI and Lucretia was the Pope's desire to freely enjoy life with his daughter, which, in his view, indicated possible murder, incest, and blood crimes. It can be confidently said that even such vivid and sinister legends found their reflection in literature and film, and perhaps not coincidentally, since writers like George R.R. Martin likely read numerous stories about families like the Buras, drawing inspiration from the most unpleasant aspects of their history and relationships. Thank you for your attentive acquaintance with our historical unmasking. If you enjoy uncovering the most fascinating and important events of the past, delving into details, and discovering new facts, then this project is just for you. We value your desire to seek the truth and expand your knowledge. By supporting us, You help maintain interest in history and continue research that uncovers its secrets. Also, don't forget to visit our main page. There you will find even more amazing and astonishing facts about everything in the world, making this universe even more interesting and vibrant.